Let's do the news. Let's do some news. When real men can't sleep, real men do the news. And this real man is wide awake at 3 in the morning. And I didn't get the opportunity to get around to doing some stories earlier today because of trip stuff. I've said before that my mom is ill. And I've had to reposition in order to try to get back into the United States. Not planned. It's like a Mad Max Brexit. It's unplanned. It was an all balls, no helmets. But yeah, completely unplanned. The original plan was to kind of work your way around, and by the time you're making these like little jumps, and the little jumps, because they're small jumps, they aren't necessarily hitting you. I mean, many of these places you can go by train or by bus. And so you're not necessarily taking any massive hit to your wallet as you kind of just work your way around. By the time you get to somewhere like Japan, and then you make the jump to California, that's somewhat of a big jump, but at that point you've saved up enough to make that big jump just from these baby jumps along the way. With the idea of eventually jumping into California, and then from California going back to the States, around the world, without having to pay any major expenses from the standpoint of big trips. Well, turning tail and going back was not planned. So that was a painful affair to work that shit out. In fact, I've said before, when you do this stuff, and I'll get to the story. Yeah, I have actually an interesting story. Bit of applause for Donald Trump. And I'll get to it. I've said before that when you're doing this, there are certain things that you have at your disposal that you give. And the things that you have sometimes is not always cash. Like sometimes there are things that you can give of yourself in order to make it work. That, a certain degree of pain that you're going to have to take or suck up instead of financial. Meaning, it's kind of like chess. What are the things that I have at my disposal to get the things that I want to accomplish? What am I willing to trade off? There's no perfect process. There's always something that you trade off in the mix in order to accomplish whatever you want to accomplish. And in this case, sometimes it's, I am going to feel horrible for a few days. And other times it's, I'm going to feel horrible because I had to pay out more than I wanted to pay out. This is one of those times where there was no way of, there was no mitigation. It's just, a ticket is a ticket is a ticket, especially when the ticket is all at once and at the last minute, particularly for Christmas. So I'll be back home soon. Oh, my light fell. All right, so let's get to the story. Let's get to the news. Interesting story coming out of the United States from Donald Trump. Donald Trump has signaled that he is withdrawing the American troops from Syria. Now, he's done this once before, where he came out in this big thing when he was talking to the troops. He says, I'm bringing you home. I'm bringing you home. I'm bringing you home. And then people's heads exploded, and he backed away from it. This time, he seems to be rather serious about it, and the White House has put out very plainly, the United States, we're preparing to withdraw the troops from Syria. We're preparing for a full withdrawal of the troops from Syria. Trump made the argument that, look, the reason we went to Syria was to fight the Islamic State. And the Islamic State has essentially been beaten. So why are we there? And if they've been beaten, I think he said something like 2% of the land is occupied. That small little province, if that's true, then why are we there? Now, Lindsey Graham, I think Daily Mail said, savage Donald Trump on this chicken hawk. Essentially, saying that it was an Obama-era mistake. Marco Rubio, another chicken hawk, talking about this was a disservice to the country. Nonsense. This is one of those times where Trump's logic on this is right. Trump's natural instinct on this, in the very beginning, was right. We're going to get these troops out of Syria. Why are these troops there? Why are they there? Not to mention, there were certain issues dealing with Erdogan. There was a report issued earlier that Erdogan was saying that he was going to attract American-backed Kurds in the territory. And then a few days later, you see here Donald Trump saying he's pulling them out. The Kurds in this is rather fascinating because there's a historical context to this. Going back to World War One, during the Ottoman Empire, they could, go from pillar to post because all of it was part of the Ottoman Empire. Or at the point where the Ottomans lost and got magnificently beaten by the Allied forces, Britain got their territory. And Britain sat there one day and just drew lines on a map. And in drawing those lines on a map, created borders in areas where borders didn't necessarily exist before. These guys are out there trying to reunify the stuff into some kind of Kurdistan. Erdogan sees them as terrorists, even though the United States has been working with them in order to fight ISIS. The United States is somewhat of a fair weather friend on this, sometimes being their allies, sometimes letting them be destroyed. But, Erdogan doesn't necessarily see it that way. After that report came out that Erdogan was talking about attacking America-backed Kurds, now all of a sudden this story. I don't necessarily know if that's the reason why Donald Trump is doing this. Donald Trump has seemingly always been rather sketchy about wanting to be in Syria, and I, for one, clap of the hand, sir. You get a full applause when you finally take them out and you actually go through with it. We shouldn't be there. We've taken somebody else's land and we've put military in somebody else's territory. And the interesting part, let's go to the story for the moment. The Wall Street Journal. The law doesn't matter. And I can't be too loud because it's like 3 a.m. here. But legalities don't matter. What matters comes out and says, yeah, Obama had this problem. It was kind of complicated. It wasn't complicated. It was illegal. Complicated is a euphemism that you're using for something that was illegal. Just say it. Illegal. Just nobody cares. The Senate, the Congress doesn't necessarily pull the reins on the president. They let the president go and do what the president wants. But at the end of the day, those troops are in somebody else's country illegally. The interesting part, let's look at the story for the moment. There's a part in the Wall Street Journal that is amazing, that they say it with a straight face, but it doesn't, the legalities of it doesn't matter. I'm fascinated by that. So, U.S. military preparing for a full withdrawal of its forces from Syria. The move throws campaign against Islamic State into question. Pullout sparks concern from the White House and State Department to Pentagon. Everybody hates this. That should give you this idea of media. The mainstream media dislikes this choice. They dislike the choice. They give you this perspective of media. The U.S. military is preparing a rapid withdrawal of its forces from Syria, administration officials said Wednesday, a move that sparks an abrupt reversal of the American strategy in the Middle East. Okay. As America's 4-year-old military campaign against ISIS draws to a close, President Donald Trump has ordered a speedy exit for about 2,000 American forces in Syria that one official said could unfold over the next 30 days. Good. Americans began informing partners in the northeast of Syria on Wednesday of their plans, according to the people briefed on the planning. The Pentagon has an order to move the troops out of Syria as quickly as possible, the official said. Now, in this one, all of these chicken hawks flip out, but let's go further into this. I want to deal with this part. Trump. We've defeated ISIS in Syria. My only reason for being there during the Trump presidency, he wrote on Twitter after Wall Street Journal reported his plans. Now, there's another aspect to this. His supporters, his base, doesn't like this. Meaning, his base, many of them are non-interventionists. And this idea that they're in somebody else's country in this way, they're somewhat sketchy on. Now, it's not that I necessarily think these guys are peaceniks, but from the standpoint of intervening into military affairs, they tend to be less hawkish than many of the basic Republicans. Good on them for that. Just because we come to the table for different reasons, you get steak, I get chicken, you're still at the table. Welcome aboard. It looks good from the standpoint of politics to say we've won. Congratulations on Trump. You can thank Trump for this and, pull out. But again, it's hard to know what's in Trump's head. Trump has seemed to always have been somewhat sketchy on being in Syria. Let's see. And right here, Lindsey Graham This will be an Obama-like mistake. A senior White House official, however, appeared to contradict Mr. Trump's plan, saying the U.S. forces will remain in Syria until the fight against ISIS is over. Well, if the President of the United States say he's pulling them out, it's the President of the United States. Sit the fuck down. The apparent contradiction appeared to owe to what a third U.S. official said were conflicting interests within the administration between those pushing to keep the U.S. forces in Syria indefinitely to counter Iranian aggression versus Mr. Trump's insistence on disengaging. In recent days, Mr. Trump has grown impatient and told his advisors, enough is enough, the official said. Yes, the President of the United States. All of you other bitches sit down. I am the President of the United States. I love that. I love that. I call him a reality show host, but on this day, I would call him Mr. President. Good job. Good job. Let's keep going. Because the wild part about this article is that the contradiction appears for those who want to fight Iranian aggression. Well, Iran has been welcomed in this area by the sovereign person who's in charge of that country, Bashar al-Assad. Now, whatever you want to think of him, he is the person who's in charge of that country. He's you can call it the legal government. He's welcomed Russia and he's welcomed Iran. The United States has not been welcomed to that table. We're in that country illegally. We're flouting international law on this. So I'm not going to go fully into the details of the exit plan and everything else. You can read that part. Let's see. Where is it? There's a very specific part. I don't want this one to go too long because I have a few stories to do and it's already insanely late. Right here. Officially, the U.S. military has no authority to battle Iran in Syria. You can change officially with legally. You can interchange those words. Legally, the United States has no authority to battle Iran in Syria. Their mission has been to defeat Islamic State and ensure the militant group that once controlled large swaths of Syria and Iraq to be unable to regroup. That task is largely complete. Islamic State has been effectively cornered in a small stretch of Syrian territory along the Iraq border, while the United States military estimates about 2,000 fighters have managed to hold off complete defeat for months. Right there. Right there. That paragraph all the way towards the bottom. Right there. Breathtaking honesty. Breathtaking honesty. Legally, the United States has no authority to battle Iran in Syria. Their mission has been to defeat ISIS and to ensure the militant group that once controlled large swaths of Syria and Iraq is unable to regroup. That task is largely complete. Okay, so why are you pitching a fit with the president? Islamic State has been effectively cornered in a small stretch of Syrian territory along the Iraq border, where the U.S. military estimates about 2,000 fighters have managed to hold off complete defeat for months. Earlier this month, the Pentagon says Islamic State controlled about less than 2% of the territory it once held in the Middle East, sparking a vow by Mr. Trump to get all forces out of Syria. We'll be coming out Syria like very soon, he said in the spring. I want to get out. I want to bring our troops home. Agreed. You have my agreement, Mr. President. I would not call you a reality show host today on this very specific story. This is something I agree with. Look, we smashed the Middle East to bits. We've set it ablaze. The troops, ISIS is a direct result of the actions that we took when George Bush destroyed that country. And the legality of what we've been doing from one country to the next for this thing of geopolitical influence has been legally sketchy at best. And I've argued on multiple occasions that it was completely illegal to ingratiate ourselves into somebody else's country when they didn't necessarily want us to be in that country. If you were talking about fighting ISIS, Russia, Syria, and Iran had it. This idea of trying to counter Iran is not necessarily, again, even by their own standards, it's not what they were there for. And it has no legal bounds. Just saying. president wants us out, then we should go out. I agree with him on this. I agree with him. We created ISIS. I don't, by our actions, yes, I don't necessarily think we, I mean, it's true that we were supporting terrorists in every region of the globe to try to undermine Bashar al-Assad and try to slice that country into shreds. But whether or not we, created, maybe a little strong. It depends on what you mean by create. I wouldn't count on this manifesting. So here's the thing, Crisco. That's why I say applause when it's finally done. A tap of the hand for instigating, but you get the real applause when you actually do it. I need to see it take place before you get my full, rah. Trump is not a president. He's about to go to jail. He's the president until he goes to jail. And him being impeached doesn't mean he's going to jail. May Jones, I used to be a political junkie. Then a con man accidentally became president, and I left Facebook and stopped watching all of the news except what I get from well-informed comics, Lee Camp, and Jimmy Dore, etc. Oh, fair enough, May Jones. Well, you're here too, and I'm not a comic, so fair enough on that. Mark Benjamin, right before the election cycle, to wonder. Yes, right there. I wonder that too, Mark. Good on you. Right before the election cycle, I wonder, would that motivate to pull the troops out of Syria? I wonder, now, was it about an election? Donald Trump. The last election season is over. The new election season has begun. Right now, 2 years out, you're in campaign seasons. I've said before, I'm going to become a horrible person during campaign season in defense of Sanders or attacking somebody who is not Sanders. Fair enough. It is what it is. This is just the role that you play in being in this particular part, because of all the people who are in the political landscape, Sanders is the horse that I back. Same thing is true with Trump, though. Trump is also at this point in campaign season, and he is a weak president. I'm sorry, I know some people hate to hear that, but he is a weak president. And depending on who runs, he can be beaten. Believe it or not, I don't want Joe Biden to win, but Joe Biden probably could beat Donald Trump. Bernie Sanders could definitely beat Donald Trump. I don't know about the other hacks. I guess I'm saying, from a campaign standpoint, to claim victory over ISIS looks good from a campaign standpoint. Hey, we won. Let's get the troops out. His base supports it, and these other hacks, his base doesn't like anyway. There's a video with Ted Cruz, when he was running against Trump, and there was a crowd of people outside, and Ted Cruz was arguing with them. And mind you, it's not that Trump was going to do any of this stuff, but they're fighting and arguing back and forth, and they're yelling at them, saying, you're not Trump, and Trump is going to do this, and Trump is going to do that, and we believe in Trump, and all this other stuff. Completely hated him. He was part of the establishment and this media political elite that has let them down and has lied to them all these years. And Donald Trump, from their standpoint, is different. And in their case, they're like, we believe in Trump. In the same way you had progressives and lefties believing in Obama for those 4 years, whatever. Yes, blissfully disillusioned. Nevertheless, did not believe or hated Ted Cruz. It doesn't hurt him. All of these Republican hacks who are making this point, Lindsey Graham, Marco Rubio, all of these people, none of these people could beat Donald Trump if they were running in the Republican primary. None of it hurts him in that context. Donald Trump claiming victory in Syria and getting his troops out from the standpoint of his base is doing God's work. So, yes, Mark, fucking A. Right on. Fucking A. But the Star Wars thing is ridiculous. The Star Wars thing is ridiculous. What did Winger say? Yeah, Syrians need to keep their gas masks close. Yeah. Yes. That's a good one. Yes. That is a good point. Poor troops' economy collapses fully. You're saying because the Republicans not liking it. Well, they don't like it because they like this permanent war thing. And, like Crisco said, pull the troops out, economy collapses fully. I mean, it depends. The United States is still selling weapons all across the world. And there was this thing between Turkey and the United States where we were punishing Turkey with some kind of sanctions or whatever, but we didn't necessarily call it sanctions because they were potentially going to buy weapons from Russia. That we want them to buy our weapons. So it's a little bizarre, and it's hard to know fully, what's going on behind the scenes. But pulling troops out of Syria is not going to collapse the industry per se. We're still selling weapons all around the world. All right, I'm going to end this. Tepid applause. Full applause when it takes place, but tepid applause. I'll end it here. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support the PayPal or Patreon. Thanks all.